Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Interviewing Wednesdays. We're very glad you're with us. It's March 10th, 2021. For those people on Zoom, as soon as you come up with a question, or for anybody, as soon as you think of a question, please just open up the chat box and enter your questions in there. And for those on Facebook, please enter your questions in the comment field. I'm monitoring that feed, and we'll make sure we get those questions answered as our speakers take a break. For those on Zoom, if you're using a PC or Mac, we ask that you use the speaker view, which is in the lower left-hand corner. And where you see that red arrow, you can grab that red arrow, that white line right there, and drag it back and forth to make the speaker bigger or smaller, whatever is convenient for you. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or you have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comment, name, and picture to appear. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. I founded Career DFW back in 2008 to help those in career transition in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. In 2012, I launched CareerUSA.org to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It's available on Amazon. I've also facilitate and lead the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. I've been doing that since 2007. The group's been around since late 1990s. And I'll tell you about our upcoming program at the end of this session. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, and you'll hear more about the PIT crew in just a couple minutes. Well, we've got two great speakers who have put together this 13-part workshop on interviewing. Mark McDonald, who leads the practice interview team, and Walt Glass, who's an interview success coach. So gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves?
All right, thank you, Jeff, and welcome everybody. I see some familiar names. I see some people who have practiced already, and so you know what it's all about. Let me talk to you guys that haven't practiced yet, because you need to practice. Every time you practice, you're going to get better. You're going to get more polished. You're going to become more confident. You're going to encounter situations that you haven't encountered yet, that you might not encounter until you've interviewed 10 or 12 times. So we take extra effort to make sure the interviews are customized and personalized to your situation. So you pick a job description and send in your resume. I have a group of volunteers who have all been hiring managers. Most of them are in job search as well, just like you. They're in job transition. And so they are the ones that give the resumes, and they take it very seriously. They study the information you provide in advance and come prepared with their list of questions. And it's recorded on Zoom. There's absolutely no charge. It's free service provided by the volunteers as they give back during their job transition. And you send the information to the dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and I'll post that up in the chat window along with my LinkedIn profile. And I encourage you to link in with me. Just search on PIT in LinkedIn. You can search on the PIT crew, or you can search on my name and include the middle initial. That'll help you find me really quickly. And so there's my LinkedIn profile. And then I do a little coaching as well as running the PIT crew, and the coaching is on the topic, why did you leave your last position? And it doesn't necessarily have to be your last position. It's just, how do you answer that question? Why did you leave this job 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Carol Backel, one of the panelists, one of the interviewers, and a coach always ask that question during our practice interviews. Well, let's walk through why you left your last 4 positions. And she'll say briefly, and that's the way to answer it. But if you've got something that's going to give you a little hitch in your get up in your past, then let's have a discussion about that, and confidential. And once I understand your situation, we'll figure out how to answer that question and any follow-up questions that may occur. For example, last week I talked to someone who had in a 5-year period, way back in 2000, starting in 2008, they'd have 4 jobs in 5 years. And so we discussed the situation and decided we would just, answer the question of why did you leave those jobs as one big group, because it was a dynamic period in the economy. Things were recovering from the big recession in 2008. And it wasn't worth just explaining every single position. It was more of a period of time where she had to make a lot of job transitions. And so we just handled it as one event. And so that's how we shortened it and made it brief, and she was able to do that with confidence. So that's an example of the coaching that I do.
Thank you, Mark.
Good afternoon, everyone. Walt Glass. The reason I left my last job was I got this phone call from my manager. He said, hang on a moment. And we did a conference call with HR. And HR said, hi, today is your last day. So I left my job. But you know what? The God has blessed me, because it's the very day I should have retired, So it came out fine. I let him give me his spiel. He said, you have any questions? And I said, no. And I thought back on it, and I should have said, hey, you're going to send me a letter with all this stuff in it? And he said, yes. Okay, bye. And should have just hung up, because I was going to retire anyway. Anyway, so what do? I love to help people gain those skills and confidence for those successful interviews. And I want to start with the basics and the fundamentals. Because if we got a mindset and an idea of categories of questions and approaches, strategies, options, because you can't always answer a question the same way every time. Depends on who's asking, where you are in the process, and what the question is. So we discussed that and talk about it. You get a video. I was used to thinking, I say, well, I'll make it a free workshop, but I'll charge you $100 for the video. But I didn't go on with that idea because nobody wanted to buy their videos. Nonetheless, you can get a video, you get a handout, you get some information, and you get some learning and exercise on differentiating yourself. And, I've listened to quite a few candidates. I know Mark has listened to in the thousands of candidates. We hear a lot of the same answers, over and over again. So do the interviewers. They hear the same stuff over again. Well, what salary? Well, I'm sure that we can come to some mutual agreement, blah, 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 blah. It's the same stuff over and over again. So how do we not do that? How can we answer that in a better way? So it's very informal. I do it on Tuesdays. You have to be registered to attend. I'm going to put some information in the chat window so that you can see how to connect and contact with me. Send me a note if you'd like to connect. Give me a call or send me an email to get registered. And we'll have some fun while we're learning. I call it learning without squirming.
Great, Walt. Thank you very, very much. All right. So today we're on session 10 of 13, building rapport, establishing chemistry with the interviewer. So gentlemen, take it away.
All right, I'm sharing my screen. There you go. You got that, Jeff?
Yep, you're good to go.
All right, very good. So today we're going to talk about building rapport, one of my favorites. I think actually all of them are my favorites. So this is my favorite this week. Walt and I spent a lot of time, besides developing the course, discussing and strategizing about the order that we should present this information. And so there's just a lot of important things. We tried to put them in the most important order, and this one ended up as number 10, but it's very close to all of the other things you need to do to have an effective interview. Today's building rapport with the interviewer. And let's see if I can get it to work again. Here we go. There we go. Wow. Last week I had trouble with the mouse. I may have to abandon it again. So here's all 13 sessions. There's about 20 hours worth of stuff, and we're on session 10, building rapport. So this is the last of the second group of 5. So the first group of 5 is all about preparing. The second group of 5 is all about effective interviewing. And so this is number 10 out of that second group. And then next week, we're going to go on to some special topics, target companies and informational interviews, and how to handle difficult interviewers coming up after that. And then the common mistakes that people make. And so by reviewing those things, hopefully you can avoid that. But that'll round out the 13 sessions. And so building rapport is today's sessions. And so let me jump ahead here. Yep, preparing to interview, effective interviewing, and then advanced topics. And here we are, session 10. Okay, this is your cue. Walt, please take it away, and then I'll be back to give my perspective on building rapport. And then we got a funny video at the end. You want to wait to watch that video. You're muted, Walt.
I lost my control panel. I lost everything on it.
I
Just
know.
love it. By the time I get used to it, they'll update it and I'll be all messed up again. And so let me do this and reshare so that things are coming out on top. Well, I don't know where everything goes sometimes. All right. So now that the technology challenges have been faced and conquered once more.
Walt, you're
What
not
is-
sharing. You're not sharing.
I'm not sharing.
So, hey, while Walt's getting that squared away, we encourage you to ask questions, put them in the chat window. We'd like this to be as interactive as possible. The material is really tutorial or educational lecture in nature, but when a question pops up, we'll answer it if we can, and we'll certainly have pauses built in to address your questions. So just put them into the chat window when they occur to you. I'll be monitoring that. You want me to do it, Walt, and I'll just run the screen?
For some reason or other, I'm having a problem. Try one more time. It's up there. Hold on.
And also, we can barely hear you, Walt.
Okay, I'll work on that one
Oh,
too.
there you go. Now the audio is back.
Yeah, I'm trying to solve that audio problem over time, but it doesn't seem like it works. Anything working now?
There we go.
Yes.
We see it.
Holy cow. Well, that was simple. So let me ask you this. What does really the meaning of rapport, and what are we talking about here? So we're really talking about a connection. So I love the word connection. I have contacts in LinkedIn and I have connections in LinkedIn, and they're differentiated by the level of relationship that I have with the individuals listed. Some people I don't know very much about at all. I know that they have asked me to link in, they send me a note, say they met me, maybe on this kind of presentation or something. And so, I link in with them, and then if they ever need some help or whatever, I'll be glad to try to help them out. But the other ones, I know a little bit about, right? And so connections are more important than contacts in the job search mode, because we like to build connections with our contacts. So now we're going to push it forward to our interviewer and the people that are hiring and the interviewers, and say, I'd love to build a connection with my interviewer. That's going to help us differentiate ourselves, but we have to be genuine, authentic, true. We have to be ourselves, okay? So it's not a technique. This is just something we'd like to do. Now, you may fail at this. It may not work. It's just maybe a different culture, a different personality, something, some of it just doesn't mix. And that's okay, because we don't want to work with people where we have a personality conflict and a culture failure between the two. But it is a way of making a connection and say, hey, we're on the same page. Really, if you look at it, if we make a connection with people, we begin to feel, and they begin to feel comfortable and accepted. All right. And so that is a good result of that. Comfortable is great for us, great for them. So we need to know how to connect with them. And it doesn't matter who they are, where they came from, or anything like that. We want to say, okay, how do we really go about making that connection, or at least attempting to do that? It's a short form of emotional intelligence. So let me just pay a little bit of attention to emotional intelligence. And so in the short definition of that, it's a way of reading other people and understanding what drives them, what motivates them, what blocks them. We begin to look at not only the knowledge they have, but we also look at the feelings and the thoughts that they have and try to determine what they are. And as with any type of assessment or whatever, we're always looking to say, how can we communicate in their frame of reference, in their world? Effective communication is not telling them what we want to say. It's telling them in a way that they understand from their perspective what we are saying. Okay, and that's very different. So I like to feel a good idea of how I should communicate with them a little bit differently than with everyone else. So that would be a good way to do it. So what do we want to communicate? Well, that's the old I am, I do, I help. Who we are, what we do, and how we help. The I am is the culture fit, the personality, and style, that sort of thing. The I do is our experience, our background, our hard skills, the things that we have accomplished and done in the past. With the I help, how can we add value to that? So we want to sell those things, and we want to make a connection and build rapport, and we like to do it across these three topics. Well, my mouse is really sensitive. Well, what do we want to do? Well, who are they? And what do they do? And how do they help? So one of the ways to find out if we can understand their personality and characteristics, then that's that emotional intelligence factor. It's their style, it's their personality. What do they do? And how they make a contribution. Where do they fit into the scheme of things? That's going to help us build that connection. So rapport is a way of building relationships. Okay, that's important because all this world of connecting is, my favorite way is say, you know how to make a good connection? Help others. When you help others, you will make a connection. You help them first, and then we've got this culture that says they'll be glad to help us. It's not a technique, it's something that we want to do, something that's natural for us. It's I would like to help others. I think when we get into the job search mode, we're a lot more likely to help others than before when we were not looking for a job, because we know and understand what it is to get help and to understand the value of that. And so we are a lot more willing to help others too. So that can make us a great mindset. We want to keep that up. But who do you want to build relationships with? All right. So we don't want to just go willy-nilly. We want to have an approach, a target. So who are the people that can really be a strong relationship with us that would benefit both us and them? Well, the inspirational people, all right, the key stakeholders, the possible connections, interviewers, hiring managers. We don't really want to hang out with the negative people, right? We want to hang out with the people that are kind of in the world that says this is a better place. And I want to be one of those people too, okay? So it's a two-way street. I'd love to connect this likability factor. It's kind of an oversimplification, but in an interview, if they don't like you, they're not going to hire you. I don't care what you do. I don't care about your experience. I don't care about your value. It's likability. Do they like us? A good signal of do they like us is if we like them. That means we've built something between us, and we can see that there is a feeling, there's an emotional attachment, there's something going on here other than just the job, the description, the company, and kind of the vanilla part. And so that's our objective, to see if by selling who we are, what we do, and how we help matches what they're looking for and creates that likability. So employers are always looking at these things and saying, well, can our candidates, can they do the job? Will they do the job? I remember years ago when I was in leadership development and I was into the hiring aspect of helping managers do a better job of hiring. A lot of work left to be done there in the world, but they would ask, can they and will they do the job? A lot of people could do it, but will they do it? Are they motivated to do it, right? Will they be a good team and a culture fit? I can remember working for EDS back in 1974 when I started working there for about 25 years. We were called the military company. A lot of ex-military were hired coming out of the Vietnam era. But you had a lot of responsibility, a lot of capability, a lot of the kind of characteristic that you could have to help build a company. So that was kind of a culture fit. But, we didn't run around saluting. We didn't do all that sort of thing. But we definitely had a kind of a mindset. I remember there's a couple of things I learned. One was, this is a Ross Perot, if you remember Ross Perot, said, in this company, if we see a problem, we own it. And either we fix it or we put it in the hands of somebody who can fix it. But in the meantime, you just don't shake your head and walk away. You own the problem when you see it, and this is the approach we use. That's a very cultural thing. We didn't have to have a protocol of you have to contact A's manager so you could contact A. You contact anybody in the company that had the knowledge that could help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. So those kind of things was a definite cultural deal. didn't fit too well in the federal government. It didn't, that's not the way things work in the federal and the state. And a lot of our clients and customers were like that. And we had to operate very differently in their cultural world than in our cultural world, because we had a lot of federal and government clients. So bottom line is, good rapport can help them have a good feeling about the answers to those questions. So that's the value of rapport. So we tend to be attractive to people who have similar qualities to ourselves. They're like us, okay? And the similarities are emphasized when the rapport is good. But so what we want to do is, what is similar between the two parties? What's similar? That's the good thing. Now, similarities are the responsibilities of the job, the activities that you do, the value that you bring, the I am, I do, I help. Okay, that's matching. And I think you'll all agree that really, for great communication to occur, rapport is essential. Some connection. And you can talk to a person on the street. I like to when I go into the grocery store, I like talking to somebody I've never seen before. I love to tell a story. One of my favorite things is in front of the spaghetti sauce. And if somebody's there looking at spaghetti sauce, and I look at it too, and I said, so how do you choose spaghetti sauce? And believe it or not, I've done that 3 or 4 times, and they start going into this spiel about how they choose and what they like and what brand and all that sort of thing. If you've ever been to the grocery store in front of the spaghetti sauce, there's a lot of choices up there. But that just, and we start just by talking about the common thing of looking for spaghetti sauce makes a connection. Interesting how small, how that works. So what do we want to do? We don't want to, when we're talking with people and build connections, but we don't want to go in there dumb. I mean, that means lack of knowledge, lack of preparation. What can we do to engage on current issues in a company? What's going on with them? We can ask questions about that, all right? And that's a great way to ask a question about something that's going on there and engage in with them. But we've researched and looked something up and can talk intelligently about it. Same thing about the person. You probably heard, if we can look them up on LinkedIn, find out who that interviewer is, find something in common, something in common. That's a great start, because as soon as you do that, the notch from moving from contact to connection just moved up a quantum jump, all right? A big step at one time. And first impressions are really going to count, because unfortunately, as humans, we love to make snap judgments. I don't know that we're really paying attention to it, but that's what we do. We are kind of we're a good computer brain. It's got zeros and ones. It's on or off. It's good or bad. There's a few neutrals out there, but we see somebody, we begin to make these judgments. So the way we look. So we want to pay attention to those things, particularly with the video interviewing today, because it's a lot different than doing the face-to-face stuff. But how we smile and that statement of enthusiasm, very, very important. So take a genuine interest, all right? So while you're in the interview, one of the things in the back of our mind is, how do I build a connection? We've had several topics that we've talked about in preparing. This is the last topic on the actual interview. And today, we're really going to hit some of those same things, but say these are the ones that stand out for helping building rapport. So visualize that person as an important guest in our home. I can remember my wife, God rest her soul, she'd be angry at me. She would be, she'd be upset. She'd be talking and the phone would ring and she'd go for, oh, and you always do that. And say, hi, how are you doing? And talk, and just turn that switch right like that. And I said, gee, how can she do that? How can she be upset with me and then turn it right on? And so, well, treat that person, as a guest, not as the hiring person. We're not candidates. We are professionals trying to find a match, all right? And if you think I'm a candidate and I'm trying to get a job, that's one thought. But I'm on the other side, I'm a professional and I'm going to demonstrate how I can do the I am, I do, I help here to be successful in this role and to help you. That's a whole different mindset, and you come across a lot differently. And then, of course, if you've read Covey's 7 Habits, habit 5 is seek first to understand and then be understood, right? Finding out the needs, finding out what we can do, how we can help, and what kind of personality fits best here. So be a good listener. We have the habit, I don't know, I think most of us do. When a question is being asked, our mind immediately jumps to trying to figure out what the response is before they have even finished asking the question. We are so tight, bent up about saying, oh, I've got to answer all these questions. My life's flashing in front of my face. I've got to do something here. I got to answer quickly, which is not true. You can pause and think. Interviewers love that. But being a good listener means, boy, if you stopped and thought about that question and you paused, you're sending a compliment to the interviewer. And interviewers like that very much because you thought consideration carefully about that particular question and that response. So be a good listener. Give them a compliment. Find something that they've done in the interview process, in your thank you notes, in whatever it is that says giving them a compliment. Who gives an interviewer a compliment? All right. Very different than most candidates. A sense of humor. Now, don't tell a joke. I've got some great jokes. I think they're very funny, but I'm the only one who thinks they're funny. So it doesn't always work for me to tell a joke. I was telling some jokes the other day. The person, I could tell they were laughing out of just being nice. I don't think they understood a word. So avoid talking about the things that are really controversial today. Today is not a very good day to talk about what's going on in the news media, most of that stuff. Stick with topics that are related and relevant to the industry, organization, and the role. So how do we do this? I hate to kind of mention these like this because it sounds like a technique, and I don't want it to be a technique. I want it to be something that comes forth from inside, from your heart and from your mind, and how you are you. But smiling makes a huge difference, and it actually creates a physical reaction in your body that makes you feel better, and the recipient does as well. A lot of people smile at the introduction. I see a lot of people doing a good job of smiling because they are, they're smiling. But then they stop and there's no smiling throughout the rest. And it's your mindset. If you are unprepared and you walk in and say, gee, I don't know if I can answer these questions and I'm worried, it's pretty hard to smile at the same time when you're feeling that way. So maintain this eye contact. Now today, eye contact means looking at a camera. All right, this is tough. This is different. This is hard to learn. I'm still trying to learn how to do that. But you got to make looking into a camera so that when I'm talking, I'm looking to the camera, and when they're talking, I get to look at them. But if I'm looking off to the side and I'm paying attention, okay, I'm looking over here at Mark and I'll see Jeff and I'm watching them as I'm talking to them, then I'm not talking directly to you. Using their name. Our name is sacred. You ever been in a room and it's really noisy and somebody says your name? Well, I know you need to know this is one of the most important things in the world, that your brain has the reticular activating system, and it decides of all the things you're gathering through all of your five senses, what comes through. Everything doesn't get through. I mean, you might hear something in the background, maybe the air conditioner is running and you hear it, but you don't pay attention to it. It just doesn't come through. Your name always comes through. Those are the most sacred words to your mind and your brain. Is your name that always says, oh, pay attention to that. And you can hear that. Mentioning mirroring. All right, I list that because some people talk about it, but I'm not really happy about that one. Anybody want to guess why I don't really care for that one? It's not too obvious, but when I say it, I think you'll see it. Well, here it is. I think it's a technique. I don't think it's being who we are. I think it's a technique for sales. All right. So I'm not telling you don't use it, but when we do it, we're not doing it out of our mindset and heart. We're just doing it as a technique to try to get our objective met. So it may be effective. It may help you, but I kind of like the genuine things better than this one. Engage, open-ended questions. The questions you ask, and we have a whole session on questions, but engaging them and getting into that conversation. And you're trying to also, while you're getting the conversation and getting responses to that, you are also looking for similarities, commonalities, okay, anything like that. So it's something in the back of your mind. And then your star stories. Star stories are so strong in helping build a rapport and a connection because the people live the experience with you as you're telling the story. Whenever somebody tells a story, for me, I'm actually putting myself into that story. I'm experiencing and listening to what they're telling and going through at the same time. I mean, that's when you read a story. That's when you see a movie, you identify with the character and you're feeling it too. All right. Even though I'm sitting in the chair and Tom Cruise is hanging out a window about 2,000 feet up in the air off this tall office building in Dubai, you know, I'm terrified. All right. Heights and me don't get along. And I'm just sitting here easy in my chair. I experienced that same thing with them. And the star stories do that same thing. Very, very powerful. So the basic aim is to show that we think along the same lines. We share similar professional outlook and a way of working, kind of leading to that likability. Now, others may have similar skills and experience, but if our presentation is genuine, the personality, the approach is different, we can be the star candidate as long as it matches and it's relevant to that particular job and that company. By the way, don't forget, we also prove we want to do the job too. So I don't want you to over focus on this. It's part of what you want to do and think about. So that's part of building your questions list to help that. That's part of building your star stories. That's part of doing the opening, those kinds of things. So I want to ask you this question, and I'm going to see if I can get the chat window open. It's amazing how this thing works. In the chat, and I'll put the question and the options also in the chat. Which 3 of these 8 things that are listed, and I just picked 8, there's more. When you say, if I were to look at and pick 3 of the things that I might want to focus on and pay attention to, that might have the most significant impact in an interview, which 3 would they be? So I'd like to give you a minute or so to look at this list of 8 and just put in the numbers in the chat window of the ones you think would be the best and most significant impact for you. Am I getting anything? There's some numbers coming in. Six seems popular. 1, 2, and 3 are popular. Okay, I still like you to finish answering that question as you're going. But so I'm going to ask Mark to jump in and say, Mark, I'm going to ask you the same question. Well, you and I both do a lot of stuff on interviewing. Which one do you think is the most critical?
Number 1, I think, is the most critical. An opening statement of enthusiasm along with a strong opening statement. And then in our sessions on opening and closing, we also say, once you've made your opening statement, you need to ask some questions to verify what their most important priorities are. So that sets you up for everything that follows. You'll know what's important to them. You're giving them a chance to answer that question for you. And then you can focus on that in the rest of the interview and connect, use that to connect with them. I guess if I had to pick a number 2 would be sharing common experiences with a star story, right? Using that emotional connection to build rapport.
Mark, you know, number 6 and number 2 are similar. All right. 6 is saying a common experience and a star story, but common ground is a little bit broader. We may have gone to the same school. We may, have worked in the same type of job or role. Maybe we both served in the military, whatever it might be. So those are important. So if you ask me what the first one is, I certainly agree with Mark, because it's that opening and the setting of the tone and your presentation of yourself in the very beginning, because it is said that people will make decisions within the first few minutes of an interview, whether that's a positive or a negative. A lot of decisions are made right up front. And so if we can accomplish those in the beginning, start finding out the questions about what their needs are so that we can match and find the commonalities and match the commonalities, very, very important. So those are mine. Okay, Mark, I think it's you.
All right, let's switch screens here, see if we can make this work. And I get my control panel back. All right, I think I'm set up. Oh, the mouse works too. Gee, Monelli. What a day it is.
Technology, wonderful.
Simple things bring us such pleasure. Here we go. All right, so you're going to hear a lot of the same things that Walt said from a kind of different angle. Let's just say a slightly different angle, the way I think about it. And so he started with the definition. I'm going to start with the definition, and and we talked about this because last week we talked about enthusiasm. So let's bring that up too as well. So rapport, as Walt said, is a connection, a relationship you build with somebody else. One of the important things to realize about this is the very last sentence. Sometimes this happens naturally, and I want you to think back on a time where you met somebody or didn't know somebody very well, and you started having a conversation, and it kind of developed into something very sympathetic with each other, and you realized that you had a lot in common, and they thought like you and you thought like them, and so it's a connection. And so today we're talking about things you can do to facilitate that in an interview situation. But that's what it is. You express your point of view, you find out they have a similar point of view, you may have shared experiences and the kind of work you've done, and so all of those things go to building rapport. And so you want to think about how you draw that out. Enthusiasm is more an internal thing with you, and demonstrating enthusiasm, which we talked about last week. And if the interviewer is enthusiastic about those things as well, then you're also building rapport when you demonstrate enthusiasm, but they are kind of slightly different things. Showing enthusiasm is just one part of building rapport. So let's, if you go in Google, building rapport, here's what it says. And so I'm going to kind of present this information and talk about it. Boy, that's a little small type, but so number one thing, and we had a candidate this week do this, is to follow the lead of the interviewer or interviewers. And so this particular candidate, like many candidates, tended to over elaborate, would talk too much, and we knew this was a third level interview. This is her third interview, and she was going to be interviewing with several VPs, and so we just cut her off. After she said enough, we said, okay, good, that's fine. And that happened twice, and then she got the message. She adapted. She started shortening her answers, and then because she wasn't totally comfortable with this, she really wanted to talk more. She would ask at the end of her short statement, did I answer your question? Okay, so I noticed that. It made a difference to me. I realized that she had almost immediately recognized that we were running out of patience with her and adapted. So same idea there, adapt to the style of your interviewer. Okay. And here it says in words exactly what just happened. If they're busy or they prefer concise and to the point answers, don't try to be talky. Just don't do it. You're just by being like them, you are going to be taking steps towards building rapport, even if they're, not big personalities. So, there's another point there is, as opposed to being outgoing or enthusiastic is not always the best way to build rapport when you're not matched with someone who's not outgoing or enthusiastic. Asking questions back in return. So sometimes these are called pop-up questions, but they ask you a question and you ask a follow-up question, especially if it's personalized. Can be, like what's your opinion on this topic, or what's your perspective? Can be a good way to build rapport. you always need to be aware of time management. You can overdo this. You can ask too many pop-up questions. And the real damaging part of it is they may distract the interviewer, or they may use up time, valuable time that you need to talk about how you help. But once or twice in an interview, pop-up question is good. And if you have more time, if the interview is 45 minutes or an hour or even an hour and a half long, then you've got plenty of time to ask those questions, especially questions specifically designed to build rapport. You may want to explore, I talked about in the answer to Walt's question about star stories, which give you a connection. The broader, Walt mentioned this, the broader area is common ground. And so those may be hobbies, they may be volunteer organizations, and those, they may be school, education experiences. You might both be in Toastmasters. You know, those things also help build rapport. It doesn't just have to be job related. But star stories are also a very good technique where it's a job related experience that they may have had as well. The star story on its own is just a good story because it has a good ending, a very positive success at the end. And so that, as Walt mentioned, they'll celebrate that with you, but it may turn out that they're also shared experiences. And so that's an opportunity to develop more rapport. Active listening, Walt mentioned this. And I think it comes up on another slide. I'll just jump on it now. You know, active listening includes pausing, and especially in video interviews, because there can be a little bit of time lag. You want to pause before you begin to answer. We've had some candidates at the pit crew pause on almost every question, not because they didn't have an answer in mind, but because it's an effective way to demonstrate that you're being very serious and conscientious about developing in your mind the answer to your question before you speak. And if you do that and then you deliver a very succinct and to the point answer to the question, that enhances your credibility and believability, and also a positive impression on the interviewer. Okay, so let's a couple more things that are show up on Zoom when you Google this. I mean, show up on Google when you search for this, building rapport. Appearance. So I think most people know that when you show up at the interview, you want to dress like a step and a half above half step above what they dress like. So if they're casual, you want to just be slightly more formal casual. If they're formal, you want to be extra formal. But you don't want to have a big displacement between how they normally dress and how you show up. Just a small displacement. So that's just the way you look is one of the things that people make an assessment of you. That's not on a conscious level. I already mentioned listening and pausing and finding common ground, creating shared experiences. So you create the shared experiences by the stories you tell, but those you may not know that that's a shared experience. So you can just ask them, right? If once you tell a story, you can say, how does that resonate with you? As another way just to see if there's something in common you have there. Be empathetic. This is a good point, and empathy is kind of related to emotional intelligence, but it's seeing things from their perspective is the way I really think of it most. And so a lot of times this comes up, and it doesn't have to necessarily be with the interviewer. So when we talk about how do you answer the question, why did you leave your last job? We talk about using words that a hiring manager might resonate with because they had to do it. They had to do the layoff, right? So you can say things like, I understood that the company needed to reduce staff. Instead of saying, unfortunately, I was let go, you can say, I understood the company needed to reduce staff and my job was eliminated as a result. So now you're talking to them from your previous company's perspective and not making so much of a judgment of it, but it was just something that was necessary to be done that shows some empathy for their position. And again, what Walt mentioned, and I'll second what he said, mirroring and matching as can be effective, and you may have found yourself doing that, not on purpose, it just happened. Especially, when you meet somebody and face to face, it's easier to notice that when you start to make a connection with somebody, you start, when they lean in, you lean in, when they lean back, you lean back. You tend to mirror, they're resting their chin on their right arm, you do your left arm. So people from a distance can clearly see it, but you don't even realize you're doing it. It does help, and it's very subconscious. And as Walt said, if you try to do it consciously, it becomes more of a technique, and that actually can backfire because it's just, it's not a natural act. Okay, so building rapport in a shortish interview, 30 or 45 minutes. Let's focus on that specifically. And so here's the headliner. It appears on several slides here. Do what you would normally do in an interview and be intentional about building rapport. So again, these are the things that you want to do in addition. And I would say when you come and practice the pit crew, and as you practice more and more, and as you have more and more interviews, you will begin to think about this. So instead of being so concerned about how you're going to answer a question, you've got that sorted out. You know what your value is and how you can help and how you can contribute. Once you get into the interview, you spend more time thinking about how you might make this connection and less time being worried or concerned about exactly what comes out of your mouth, because you're well practiced on that. So you're kind of now moved to a more advanced level of interviewing where you're trying to your focus during the interview is to build this connection. So a good way to demonstrate enthusiasm and to, make the hiring interview think you're like them is to be well prepared. Okay, bring some of your work product that you've done in the past. And if you don't have any work product, do a cover letter and bring that along. You may or may not decide to send in your cover letter, but I would certainly do one. It's a work product that helps you analyze the job description, helps you figure out in advance what you think the priorities are based on the job description. It can include other things that you've learned about the company through your research. We have another interviewer on the pit crew who almost always asks the candidates in a pit crew interview, what did you do to prepare for this interview? It's a really good question, and it stumps some people. But what the interview is really asking you is, how enthusiastic are you about this job? I mean, what did you do? Did you watch some videos? Did you look online? Did you read our webpage? Did you look at our financial statements? Did you call up some people who used to work here? Did you do any of that kind of stuff? Or did you just find this job and you liked it and you sent your information in? So it's a question to test your conviction. And so if you have a lot of conviction, you're going to show up with, or you're going to have done that kind of stuff. So, and in a video interview, you can do this just as well. And you just have to verbalize it. You have to say, okay, well, I have some things here. I have a copy of the resume, of my resume. I have a copy of the job description. I have a cover letter. I've analyzed the job description. I have some work product. And so as we go through the interview, I have some things to share with you if those items come up. And so now you've told them how well prepared you are. That's going to make a big impression on any hiring manager. So what does it do right there? It shows that you value their time. Okay, you're prepared, you're enthusiastic. And as Walt said, we're a couple of professionals here. We're going to sit down and we're going to find out if this is a good match, the ways I can help you, the things you need help with, and we'll go from there. Anticipate their needs. Okay, so I think I talked about this already. Answer to Walt's question about what's most important. A statement of enthusiasm, which anticipates their question, why are you interested in this job? And if you haven't seen session 5, is it session 5 or 6, openings and closings? Session 6, openings and closings. I encourage you to go back and look at that session where we talk about the statement of enthusiasm and your opening statement. Okay, so at the opening, so the statement of enthusiasm is very brief. It's something you do as part of your introduction or your greeting. is my recommendation. And you answer that question, why are you interested in this job? Very briefly, but you give an answer, you give some reasons. Well, if you get a chance to make an opening statement, and most of the time you do, like 3/4 of the time, you'll get a chance to make an opening statement. You're going to talk about some things that you've done that highlight how you can help them. And then you're going to finish your motivation story by talking about why you're interested in this company and why now. How does this role fit into the arc of your career? You'll also cover your education requirements. And if you have a simple explanation for why you left your last job, then you probably want to throw that into your introduction as well. So, but that's anticipating these questions that they may ask you. Why are you interested in us? Why do you want this job? Why do you find it beneficial? And then, how you can help them. And that's likely based on the job description. And then to continue, building rapport, you want to ask some questions. After you make your introductory statement, you want to find out what's important to them. And you're going to just ask them, what are the most important requirements of this job? What was it about my background that interested you the most? Another kind of background question is, what in my background do you believe would make the most impact for you in this role? So those are kind of questions to get them to talk now, to tell you what's most important to them. And as I mentioned, you're going to build on that for the rest of the interview. You're going to focus on that. So doing this gives you a chance to demonstrate empathy. You have asked them what their needs are and their perspectives are, and you can start playing this back to them and talking from their point of view about how you can help. But you understand what they want to achieve. Now, I think this is true. It was certainly true for me. Sometimes your motivation, they may not ask you directly, and why do you want this job? Why are you interested in our company? You've already answered it anyway. If you've done well in your introduction, you've already answered it. You're kind of heading off this issue where they don't ask, they don't intend to ask. They'll just make an assessment based on the totality of the evidence. At the end of the interview, they'll make an assessment. I don't know that they were that interested in this job, or I don't think they did a lot of background. I just don't get a strong feeling that they will do the work. They can do the work, but I don't get a strong feeling that they will. And that may not be the impression you wanted to leave. So my recommendation is, don't leave them to guess. Tell them why you're motivated, and then you don't have to be concerned that they might make a wrong assessment about you. Okay, analyzing. Yeah, there's some backup information. Okay, creating shared experiences with your stories. And we've talked about this, and I mentioned already, so I'll say it again though. Telling a great story that's short and to the point, pausing to formulate your answer, builds your credibility, that you have expertise, that you know the heart of the matter, that you're not kind of fishing around, that you have effective communication skills. So these are very powerful ways to, of course, impress the interviewer, but also to connect with them. Ask follow-up questions. Brevity is always better. This feedback goes to almost every candidate that comes to the pit crew. We have this conversation about brevity is always better than a comprehensive story. I mean, some people believe, I think a lot of people believe, if they tell a comprehensive story, all the different parts and pieces and moving things that happened and all the complications, that they'll, impress the interviewer with how thorough and effective they were. But really, it's not that way at all. That's completely wrong. A brief answer that cuts to the heart of the matter is much more effective in conveying your expertise. So work on shrinking those answers down. And you can always say at the end, would you like to hear more about that? Or did I answer your question? Now, you can ask kind of open-ended questions. Those are really good. And Walt mentioned that. You can also personalize those questions. So here's an open-ended question. What are the characteristics required to be successful in this role? But it could also be personalized from your perspective or in your opinion or based on your experience. So now that's a very personal question. It's not just a generic, open-ended question. Another way to ask this question, which is we learned from one of the panelists who came through the pit crew. He invented this. I think it's a really good idea. He said, he often asked the interviewers if they wrote the job description? And a lot of time the answer is no. They didn't. Somebody else wrote it. And so then he had a chance to say, okay, so what's important to you in this role? Very personalized question. Ask for feedback. Okay, so this is good. I think I duplicated this one. Hang on. Yeah, I'm gonna come back, ask for feedback. But asking for feedback. So a lot of people are maybe fearful to ask for feedback because it might be negative. I've even heard that some people teach, you don't want to ask for feedback because it might be negative, and then you're just going to leave a negative impression. I mean, the thinking here is the last thing that was on the hiring manager's mind was how they had to give you feedback about how you weren't the right person for this job. But on the other hand, it's a very endearing quality that you seek to improve yourself, okay? And if there is some doubt in their mind, you're never going to know what it was, okay? They're unlikely to tell you, anyone to tell you why you weren't selected. And so asking for feedback helps build rapport and, advances your chances if your, chances were slipping away. And there's always a possibility that they may say some very positive things about you. So, now, another good way to attack this, address this in an interview is to offer to tell a story. So let's say they haven't asked something, you've got a great achievement that you'd like to share, you believe it's a match, but you're not sure. You can say, would you like to hear a story about a time that I saved the company $1 million? Something that is going to be attractive to me, okay? So you can use that to build rapport. And now here's another kind of opinion question, and you can even consider this as asking for advice, okay? Which is another very endearing quality, to ask for advice from someone. So you may ask them a neutral question, and it needs to be simple, but what do you think about using Agile Scrum methodology to improve factory efficiency? Okay, now this may be something that you're interested in, but you kind of get to the point where you're asking their opinion about something, or you're asking their advice about something. And so, as I mentioned, that's endearing. And you may also learn something, but they also might say, well, that's a very interesting question, and flip it around on you. They may not answer, but they may give you a chance then to state your opinion. So I talked about feedback. Somehow I ended up with it twice on my slides. But let's talk about some spoilers real quick. So asking closed-ended questions, yes, no questions, how many of X, Y, or Z are short answers, do not advance rapport anyway. So, you still may need to ask them and want to ask them, but they're not going to be used for building rapport. So open-ended questions are much better at that. Refusing or avoiding, specifically avoiding or forgetting to answer a question is a Debbie Downer. And some people, when you ask them why'd you leave your last job, or tell me about a time that you made a mistake, just don't want to answer that question, and so they will say something else. They'll say it's very obvious, that they're avoiding answering the question, and that's bad. It's bad. It's bad for building rapport. It's not going to help your candidacy. And don't think that the interviewers won't notice. Now, sometimes you get asked a multi-part question, and so you should jot down the second or the third part, because forgetting to answer is another, way to not build rapport. It shows lack of attention to detail. And so the multi-part questions are tough, but write down the parts. The first and most people answer the second. So if it's a two-part question, they'll answer the second question, and then they'll forget to answer the first one. So write that down. Make sure you will, because this is such a common occurrence. You will impress the interviewer if you remember and answer both questions. And don't ask questions of things you could find out on your own. Okay, so that means, what does that mean? That means do your research. That means ask the recruiter, if there's a recruiter involved, ask the recruiter some questions. Sometimes it may not be clear if this is a common thing that you could find out on your own, but don't ask what their mission is or their value statement. That's going to be right online, and you can find out yourself. So it's kind of the opposite of doing your research. You start asking questions about things that you could have found out on your own. The interviewer's going to say, no, they're not really invested in this. They're not really invested in me. Down select. Okay, I think we're done, except Walt, you can take back control. Walt has a really funny video.
Anybody have any
And
questions?
while he's setting that up, do we have any questions? I saw one that came up.
Yeah, the question was, how do you handle the interviewer who has obviously been asked to interview you, but wasn't chosen to, like, I guess, a last minute?
Oh,
Here.
yeah. So we talk about that in session 12, I think. But the unprepared interviewer or the distracted interviewer. So you've done some preparation, you've got a job description, you've got the stories you tell. If the interviewer is unprepared, you make it really easy for them. You say, I saw in your job description that it looks like you need help with getting projects done on time. So would you like to hear a story about how I've managed a very challenging project to completion, successful completion? They'll go, yeah, sure. So you can just start feeding them the questions and the answers. And every now and then you might want to ask them what their perspective is on this, make them feel important. The interesting thing about these types, and this happens more often than you think, that somebody is not able to, has something come up, they were on your schedule, but they are not able. And so, 15 minutes before they drop your resume on someone's desk and they say, you're filling in for Joe, go in and interview this candidate. And even though they're not prepared, they're still going to be asked to make an assessment. And so make it easy for them, start telling them what is in the job from your perspective and what, how you can help. And you've done all that preparation work, they'll be impressed.
Stephen asked, isn't asking for feedback on an interview a way to improve?
A way to improve your chances? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. If things are slipping away. Now, some interviewers won't give you feedback. They may claim it's against their policy, and that may be true. But you can get a sense from how they answer that question, the words they use, perhaps even a little bit of their body language. If it's strong, if it's favorable, or maybe not so favorable.
I think instead of asking for feedback, I'd ask the question, how do I compare to the ideal candidate?
Yeah, there you go.
And
do you see me fitting in, or how do you see me fitting in, is a very non-confrontational question to ask as well.
Right. Canada Bob asked, can you provide a couple example of closed-ended questions?
Will you hire me?
Maybe. So how big is this division? How big is your department? Okay, those are, and you may be curious to know that question, but that's a closed. It's an answer. It's 13, but there's no elaboration. There's no thought involved. It may be a question you're interested in knowing, but it's not going to advance rapport. So
a closed-end question might be, what percent of travel do you think is required for this position? And an open-ended question, can you discuss the travel requirements of this position? Because 50% may be 6 months in Israel and 6 months here, or it might be every other week, or it might be 2 days a week, those kinds of things. And so just because they say it's 50% travel, that's not enough information, but that is a closed-end question to find out.
Right.
Mostly short answer questions.
Yeah. Let's see your video.
All right. This is not the recommended technique for building rapport.
Compare and contrast.
Mrs. Carruthers, welcome.
Hear that?
No, the audio is not. Did you put on there, share your computer audio?
Probably did, but I'll work on it.
No, you don't want the share button. It should be up in the, when you selected the video, or when you click on share screen, the option to share computer audio.
Actually, I think, to be honest,
There you
you
go.
are overqualified to be an accountant.
Oh, well, that's okay. I don't intend to work very hard.
Really?
Absolutely. In fact, I only intend to show up when I feel like it, which is good because I have a wide variety of extremely annoying personal habits and absolutely no sense of hygiene.
Oh. You know, then I don't feel like you're then the correct person for this
Well,
position.
click on escape and see
I
if we can
quit.
get rid of the
You can't quit.
thing
You don't
that's on
work
top of
I
that.
think I would ever work here.
like we would ever hire you.
There you
Oh,
go.
yeah?
Yeah. And even if you did work here, I would even give you the opportunity to quit because I would fire you.
Well, you can't fire me because I don't work here.
That's right. You don't, and I would can your ass so quick.
Prove it.
Okay. You've got the job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And now it is my pleasure to inform you that
I quit.
you can't quit. I fired you.
No, it's too late. I don't work here anymore.
Fine, let's try this again. You've got the job and now you're fired.
No, you offered me the job, but I never accepted. Look, I've already worked for you. It's very tedious. And now you want me back. I think it's a regressive career move.
Okay, what can we do to get you to come work for us?
A raise.
A raise.
$200 an hour.
$200 an hour. Okay, prorated to the 10 seconds you're gonna be working here, so 12 cents.
And this time I promise I won't quit.
You promise you won't quit. You promise you'll let me fire you.
If you still want to.
Oh, I'm sure I'm going to want to. So we have a deal?
Not yet. I've already been an accountant here. I feel like I've outgrown the position. I want something higher. How about junior vice president?
Junior vice president. $200 an hour or 12 cents, whichever comes first, and you promise not to quit before I have the opportunity to fire you.
That's correct.
Great. We've got the job.
I accept.
Great. Now you're fired.
Oh, you can't fire me. I'm junior vice president. I'm your boss.
Well, that doesn't make sense.
And as your boss, I regret that I have to fire you.
Why are you firing me?
Well, I can't help but notice as head of personnel, you've been hiring some very strange people lately at $200 an hour for me.
What am I supposed to do without a job?
Well, we do have a new position opening up in head of personnel. Do you have any experience?
Any comments? Any last comments?
I like that one. That was funny.
Anything else from Mark and Walt?
Now, somebody earlier was asking about, oops, yep, am I on? Yep. Christopher Jones was asking about, Chris, are you still there? I'd have to go way back to find it. Oh, yeah. So I agree in similarity and connection, but today there was a greater push for diversity. So we try to bring up how we are different from their normal employees and what holes we can fill for them. So I think one thing you need to think about is your unique selling proposition. You know, what is unique about you? And it can be business oriented, or it can be, you know, from your background, your ethnic background, or whatever. But yeah, diversity is important, and companies have found, I think there's research that says, you know, a diverse workforce is more effective and also attracts, you know, a broader range of customers. So it's all good. So those are things you can point out. Of course, I think the most powerful things are the ways you can help them, but you can include that in your unique selling proposition. And sometimes we'll ask candidates at the pit crew, you know, what is unique about you, and see what they offer up. So, you have any thoughts on that? Well,
That's good. You know, we're all unique, but we sometimes don't know how to express what our uniqueness is. But, you know, a lot of project managers have project management experience, but your stories and the kinds of value you have provided, your personality is going to be different.
All right, any closing comments? No? Going once, going twice? All right, well, thank you both for your presentation today. Very great information. Being enthusiastic, very, very important as you're interviewing. Just as a reminder, Career DFW and Career USA, we're putting on programming every day, Monday through Friday. Every Monday we do networking, Tuesday LinkedIn, interviewing on Wednesdays, effective resumes on Thursdays, 1 o'clock Central Time. And then every Friday morning, the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. Coming up, let's see here. Right slide here. Coming up tomorrow, Thursday, for effective resumes, we'll have resume tips and tricks. Also, you'll have an opportunity to win a unlimited use of jobscan.co for 1 month. So that'll be coming up tomorrow at 1 o'clock. This Friday at the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group at 9:30 in the morning, our speaker is going to talk about networking in a virtual world. So join us Friday at morning, 9:30. Then next Monday, our continuing networking Monday seminar, how to network from your network. Our speaker is John Mcdorman. For those people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you may recognize that name. John used to run the Monday night session down at Douglas Baptist Church, or Douglas UMC, I'm not remembering the name of it, down at Douglas Northwest Highway. And there used to be 300 or 400 people would show up every Monday night to listen to him. I know personally, I got a job coming to one of his seminars, networking with somebody who was there. So he's going to talk about how to network on this Monday. It'd be great, nice to have him back. Next Tuesday, our speaker is going to talk about how to create a brand that tells your key contacts who you are, what you do, and how you help. Please note this event will not be recorded, so you will not be able to view it afterwards. Our speaker, the speaker doesn't allow that, but so join us next Tuesday for LinkedIn. Then next Wednesday, we'll be on session number 11, networking part 2, target companies and informational interviewing. We did networking part 1 back in lesson 2, and this will be the second half of that. So networking part 2, target companies and informational interviews. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. Follow us on Facebook. When you do that, every time we go live, you'll get a little alert telling you that we're up and running. And if you follow us on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel, every time we post a new video, you'll find all about it. And actually, YouTube's the best way because you'll find all the videos sorted by playlist, and they look something like this. So this is a YouTube channel. You should be on playlist. Don't click on the video underneath it, but click on down where the green arrow is, and it says view full playlist. This will give you the best way to see like a listing of all the different programs that are up on the channel, and that way you can pick and choose whichever one you like. If you're not receiving emails for our workshops, please join the Career USA mailing list. Just send an email to career+subscribe@groups.io, and I'll put that email address up at the very end. Just please remember Career DFW, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We have no full or part-time employees. Walt, Mark, they're both volunteers. They're just here volunteering. I'm a volunteer. I've never gotten paid to do this. This is what I do to give back to the community. Career DFW, we survive on donations. It pays for the Zoom, yearly Zoom fee. It pays for web names. It pays for our web hostings and any of the expenses that Career DFW has. Please consider when you get your next great opportunity to make a donation so we can continue to do what we do. So thank you for joining us today. Mark, Walt, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think they've sent it.